Hey everyone, and welcome to another high-yield explainer. Look, if you're a dental student gearing up for Dr. Nancy Rafala's implantology exam, you are exactly in the right place today. We're going to take a massive amount of clinical information and distill it down into a streamlined, highly visual study guide. We're locking in the exact concepts, the sequences, and those tiny clinical nuances you need to not just pass, but absolutely crush this material. So grab your notes, get focused, and let's master dental implant impressions. All right, here's our roadmap for today. We're breaking this down into 6 highly testable chunks: the foundation, the core decision between impression levels, the exact closed tray steps, the snap-on modification, the splinting debate, and finally, achieving passive fit. Kicking things off with Section 1, the foundation, and really, why accuracy is just everything. Before we even think about memorizing procedural steps, we've got to understand the clinical stakes. Dr. Rafa's presentation hits us with this great quote: "Fast is fine, but accuracy's everything." And it's so true, right? In a busy clinic, yeah, it's super tempting to rush an impression just to save some chair time. But in implantology, speed never, ever outweighs precision. If your impression is even slightly off, the entire downstream process just completely collapses. And here is exactly why that accuracy matters so much. And by the way, this is fantastic exam material. A spot-on impression prevents unnecessarily long healing times. It protects the patient's delicate soft tissue, and crucially, it ensures the correct emergence profile for that final restoration. Basically, if you compromise on accuracy here, you're compromising the biological success of the implant itself. Keep those 3 bullet points front and center in your mind. Moving right along to Section 2, the core decision: implant versus abutment level. Okay, huge exam alert right here, guys. Professors absolutely love testing your understanding of the differences between working at these 2 levels. Notice the stark contrast and flexibility. Look at the abutment level side. You're dealing with intraoral prep. You have literally 0 choice of abutment, and you can't control the emergence profile. It is incredibly restrictive. But switch over to the implant level side, and it's a total game changer. It opens up this entire world of clinical control. You get highly accurate lab work, you guarantee a proper emergence profile, and you have total freedom in your abutment choice. Plus, no intraoral prep required. That means less time in the chair for the patient and ultimate customization for you. When the exam asks why you'd choose implant level, these are your exact answers. Oh, and real quick before we get to the steps, we need to clear up some terminology that constantly trips students up on multiple choice questions. Let's get this straight. Open tray is synonymous with the pickup technique. Closed tray is synonymous with the transfer or indirect technique. Burn these synonyms into your brain right now. If a test question asks you about the indirect technique, you need to immediately know it's talking about the closed tray.
All right, Section 3. Let's get into the actual procedure, the closed tray technique steps.
Okay, let's break this down step by step. Get ready to memorize this sequence because order is everything in clinical practice and on your test. Step 1. You absolutely must remove the healing abutments. Step 2. You place the impression coping onto the implant. Step 3. You block out the hex. This site prep is just absolutely critical before any impression material even gets near the mouth. Let's create a quick visual mnemonic for you right now. Notice that distinct purple material blocking out the area right next to the green coping? Lock this visual in. When you're sitting in that exam room, picture this purple blockout material. It's going to remind you that Step 3 is an absolute necessity before you take that final impression. Once we're all prepped, we move to Step 4, making the full arch impression. Now, here is the defining characteristic of the closed tray technique. The impression tray comes out of the mouth, but the coping stays attached to the implant. That means Step 5 is manually removing that impression coping from the patient's mouth. Then, Step 6, you assemble the implant analog to that coping outside the mouth. Let's look at exactly what Step 6 looks like. See the green impression coping attached to the silver implant analog? This connection point has to be totally secure because this entire assembly is about to get popped right back into the impression you just took. Which leads us perfectly into Step 7, indexing the coping. You insert that coping analog assembly back into its corresponding hole in your set impression. Step 8 is making the model, pouring the stone. And finally, Step 9 leaves you with your final stone model, complete with the analog perfectly positioned and ready for the lab. Just to really hammer home Step 7, indexing the coping, take a look at this visual. You can see the coping being carefully seated back into the purple impression material. And listen, if this isn't seated perfectly, the analog in your final stone model is going to be in the wrong place, and the final restoration will fail. Extreme precision is required right here.
Section 4 brings us to a really important nuance, the snap-on modification.
Okay, listen up, because this is a brilliant clinical variation of the closed tray technique, and it is highly, highly testable. Look closely at these yellow snap-ons. I am giving you a massive exam alert for the word click. As the source explicitly points out, exact orientation is necessary when placing this yellow snap-on onto the abutment, and you must feel and hear a distinct click sound to know it's fully seated. If you don't get the click, it's not in place, and your impression is going to be totally distorted. And here is the final clinical result of that modification. Check out the blue full arch impression after it's been removed. What's left behind inside it? The yellow snap-ons. They actually get pulled off the abutments and stay embedded right in the impression material. Keep this blue and yellow visual safely tucked away in your memory bank for exam day.
Next up, Section 5, we're diving into clinical controversies with the splinting debate.
Every medical field has its arguments, right? And in implantology, you need to know the specific facts and stats around this debate to pass. So, to splint or not to splint? That is the question. Why is this even a debate in the first place? Well, some authors argue that impression copings might rotate or move slightly inside the impression material during the procedure, or even when the analogs are being connected. Splinting ties them all together to prevent that independent movement.
So what's the actual clinical consensus here? The source notes that while some studies show no difference, splinting is heavily advised when you're placing more than 2 implants. It's widely acceptable to ensure accuracy for multiple implant cases. And honestly, this brilliantly illustrates how practitioners mitigate risk. They just don't leave it to chance. They'll tie the copings together using materials like dental floss, metal bars, or visible light-cured composite. Now, if you use visible light-cured composite, you absolutely must know this exact number: 80%. Guys, this is a classic exam question. Visible light-cured composite shrinks 80% in the first 17 minutes. Because of that massive shrinkage, the composite will actually pull the copings closer together, which distorts the impression. To fix this, you have to section the composite and rebond it after the shrinkage has occurred. Do not forget that 80% in 17 minutes rule. Write it down, star it, highlight it. Finally, Section 6. The whole reason we do all of this: achieving passive fit. We need to connect all these tedious, super detail-oriented steps back to our main clinical goal. Before they even produce the final restoration, the lab gives you a verification jig to ensure passive fit, especially for multiple implants. So the crucial point is, why does passive fit matter so much? Because any misfit causes an ill-seated restoration, and an ill-seated restoration, that leads to excessive, uneven loading on the implants themselves, which can literally cause the bone to break down and the entire implant to fail. So all of this, the open versus closed tray, listening for those snap-on clicks, debating splinting materials, waiting out 17 minutes of composite shrinkage, it all exists to answer one final question. Will your impression technique cause a catastrophic misfit, or will it guarantee the perfect passive fit? Keep that ultimate goal in mind, master the details we've walked through today, and you are going to absolutely crush this exam. Thanks so much for joining me on this explainer, and happy studying.